Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
I have a very special guest today. We're going to talk about the sprinkle effect. And a fabulous new book that Debbie has put out. And, you know, what do we mean by that? But who is this person? Who is this person that is so well known for sprinkling so many great things here, there, and everywhere? You know, imagine waking up, right? You're 50, you wake up one day and you just have like a flashback, or you have something go on, or there's something. You know, you're just overcome by the reality of the moment you're in. You're right there. And most of your life, you've been battling the I can'ts. You've said it so often that you actually believe it. But what happens when you wake up and you realize that may be an illusion? When you make a conscious decision where you can ditch the I can'ts for something else, maybe I can. What does that change for you? Well, when you go through the challenges that my very special guest has gone through, when you rise up, when you create something that is so powerful and yet relatable, you have to ask yourself, not just how did I get here, but what's coming? Debbie, before we go, what's the website right out of the gate to get the book? I want to just come out of the gate and tell people, give us your website.
I appreciate it. It's DebbieRWeiss.com. And if you go there and you just do backslash books, you'll get right there.
As I said before, Debbie Weiss is my fabulous guest today. Debbie, thank you so much. Every time I hear somebody writes a book, I give you 5 gold medals for that, because I think sometimes it's one of the more difficult things to do. But I just want to ask you, you're known for many things, but the idea of the sprinkle effect is so powerful and yet important. But my question to you is, what helped get you here? You know, what part of the role you play in life, or the things you do, or the challenges you've overcome, how have they shaped or really sculpted you to show up here with this fabulous book we're launching and being who you are? How did they shape you?
Well, I think, like you alluded to, a lifetime of challenges, as most of us have different types of challenges. But for me, I was feeling sorry for myself for a good portion of my life. And also, as you mentioned, until 50, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more. But then once I had that revelation and I started to understand that I had the power to make the shift, that led me to a whole new world I never expected existed for me. And once I discovered that, I needed to let everyone else know that it was possible for them as well.
You know, we all go through trials and tribulations in life, right? But for the most part, we don't all get to play the role of caregiver. Now, I mean, I had a moment of this last year when I went back to New Jersey to care for my best friend. You know, and I spent a year there to do that. But up to that point, I'd never really have had that experience, because most people in my family, no, all the people in my family have died suddenly and abruptly, right? But it was such a new experience for me. And I learned a lot about myself. And I learned a lot about how one has to show up, right? How has that role, being a caregiver, how did that play into shaping who you are?
Oh, I think that that's a tremendous part of who I am. And I actually, for the longest time, didn't realize that what I had been doing had a name.
Yeah.
I just assumed caregivers were, professional caregivers. I never knew there was such a thing as a family caregiver. And my journey started when I was 17. The day after I graduated high school, my father had a massive stroke. He was only 46 and he survived, but he became permanently disabled. And my parents divorced. And from that point on, for the next 30 years of his life, I was his person. And he never lived with me, but I was responsible for everything, his finances, dealing with Medicaid and Social Security and private disability, things like a normal 20-year-old doesn't have to know. And from there, when my oldest son was 2, he was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and his parents were all caregivers. But when you have a child with special needs, it just really kicks it up quite a few notches, takes it to a different level. And then my husband also became permanently disabled due to both physical and mental disabilities. And unfortunately, out of the blue, getting a terminal cancer diagnosis. And I stayed home with him for the last 6 months, taking care of him.
Wow. And through all of that, you are the author of a couple of books here, right? You're the author of Maybe I Can, right? And now coming to the forefront is The Sprinkle Effect. I love the color of the book. It's got like all the sprinkles on it. It's just really, really cool, right?
Thank you.
But I want people to understand, this is a highly anticipated book from you. It is available now. They can go to your website, right? Or they could go find it. It's called The Sprinkle Effect. You can Google it. You can go to Amazon. You can get it. It's a guide to creating a more colorful and fulfilling life. And I want to talk about that. Colorful and fulfilling. We now know statistics, whatever you want to call them, the people that count these things realize the numbers show that people that do not sense a purpose in life or a meaning in life, this is a giant hole. Now, in the workplace, we have known this for decades, that if you don't give people meaningful work, they're generally not going to perform best. But now we're talking about human beings. What is it going to take for us to get this? For us to get that here we are and we have the right to create powerful changes and create our own sprinkles for the life we want. What's that going to take?
That's exactly why I wrote the book. That's why I've written, both these books, is because I was that person you described. I had no idea. I just felt like all the circumstances of my life were just kind of like pushing me forward and that I had no control. I have a job. I have a career that is good. It's fine. But, it's nothing that really lights me up. And I didn't have some kind of like secret passion or interest that, filled me up. Yeah, of course, I have things that I enjoy, but not the same as what I have learned over the last decade. And so I think it is more and more people getting out there and talking about it until it seems that it's the norm. Because I thought to myself, I made it half a century and I didn't realize, and I consider myself halfway intelligent. So I figured there's got to be other people out there who are just like me. And that's my goal, to get the word out there that your life, you have control over it. And it just doesn't have to be kind of mediocre. That's kind of how I felt, wake up every day, repeat the whole same thing, go to bed, oh yeah, sure. Sometimes I have exciting things to look forward to, but for the most part, in the day-to-day, I wasn't inspired.
Yeah, it's like Groundhog Day, right?
Yep, exactly.
Movie, Groundhog Day, like the alarm goes off, same routine. But you know what he does? Let's talk about that. That's a great reference, because what does he do? He learns a few things along the way, and he makes an adjustment, a small adjustment to the next day, then a small adjustment. I think you could call these sprinkles.
Absolutely.
Right? He does one thing and he learns from it and he does it. In your book, what I love is, and we're going to talk about some of these, I love the introduction of Sprinkle of Possibilities. I love the word possibilities. My company is named Unlimited Possibilities now. But I love this. And then through the book, as I was reading it, I get to taste what it takes to have a sprinkle of each of these and how powerful they are when we can put them together. But I want to talk about the first one first, because to go through what you went through, right? Mm-hmm. The aha moment at 50, I want to talk about that. I'm not surprised that your first sprinkle chapter was Sprinkle of Perspective, right? I mean, yeah. I could have been surprised, but I wasn't. How did you tap into that sprinkle of perspective during your aha moment at 50?
All of a sudden, it dawned on me that 50 seemed like a big number to me. You know, for each of us, it could be a birthday, it could be a milestone, or, you know, whatever. And it really made me think, do I want to get to the end of my life and look back with regrets? And the answer was no. I realized for the first time, this was in my control. Nothing was going to change. You know, no genie was going to come out of a lamp or, you know, witch come down from, you know, it wasn't going to happen. I had to make it happen. And really, it all started. And to this day, every single thing that I do has to do with my perspective, right? And my mindset, because I could talk myself in or out of anything. It's just, you know, it's just amazing how you look at things differently and it changes it all.
I don't know what it was about that, but, you know, it's interesting to think about those shifts. You know, I had a taste of that at age 40, where I looked in the mirror and I was unrecognizable to myself. I had realized that in order for me to achieve what I achieved, the corporate umbrella, I sold parts of me away. You know, I sold parts of my soul. But perspective is so seriously important. I was so thrilled when you put it out first, because it is, I love when we can master the art of perspective forming. I love when we can do that. You know, two people can sit together and have so many things in common, but their perspectives on certain things may vary. One may believe in divorce. The other one's like, oh, no, we can't. That's a perspective. I want to ask you, as you take a look at this book and people read it, this is an effect and a realization of responsibility, as you pointed out, your aha moment. What did you do? Because I love the question. We get these things and they pop in, right, Debbie? But then, do we do anything with them? And I think that's the difference between what you're saying in this book and what most people cannot or can't or don't know how to do to get them to take a different, not just perspective, but a sprinkle of a new direction too.
Exactly. And, you know, I said that in the beginning of the book, and I say it over and over again, because I was that person who maybe heard about a concept or read a book or listened to a podcast, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's good. That makes sense. But it wasn't until I started doing that the change actually happened. So for me, the first thing that I decided to do, and, you know, I'd like to be able to say, oh, I had this all mapped out, but I didn't. I didn't even know really what I was doing. And what I was doing had a name, kind of like being a caregiver. I didn't know that really I was changing my perspective. And then I started changing my mindset. And it was all around weight loss for me, because I've struggled my whole life with my weight. And I don't mean like 10 or 15 pounds. I mean, like 80 or 100 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to go back to Weight Watchers for the umpteenth time. And I've been on other things, but for me, that had worked the best. And I shifted my mindset. I shifted my perspective. It wasn't all or nothing. It wasn't, I have to lose 25 pounds in 3 months, otherwise I'm a failure. It was, let me, instead of setting those type of goals, let me go with the smallest thing that I can think of. And that was just attend a meeting once a week. Don't worry about eating. Don't worry about exercising, water, all the things. Just show up.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It took the pressure off. I was able to just get one simple habit under my belt and then slowly sprinkle in, the next and the next and the next.
I love that we're talking about this because, part of what the message is, if there was a reoccurring theme in what you have said, what you say on your show, your first book, this book, there's this reoccurring theme, which underneath it points to why change fails. And I work with people in recovery, and I will tell you that if your singularity of purpose is to help somebody not drink, then that's your focus, not talking to them about going back to college. You see what I'm saying? So the first next indicated thing is don't drink no matter what. Don't drink no matter what. And this is the same. I want to ask you this question because I think we need a lot of sprinkles of patience.
Oh.
Right?
Yes. Patience with ourselves.
Patience with ourselves, because we're like, where's my magic wand? This is my life today. I want to take that magic wand and go puff, and I want to be like at mugworts or something.
Exactly.
But that's not what your message is in the book. Your message in the book is these small changes can add up to be powerful and meaningful. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. And it doesn't feel like it. Something so small as I'm going to show up at a Weight Watchers meeting. And I didn't lose weight, for the first 2 or 3 months that's all I was doing. But I was okay with it because I was making progress. And that is, for me, and I believe for most people, the only way that true change happens. It also gives you time to kind of, get into that habit, develop a habit that's going to stick. Yeah. We can all try and do something extreme. How long does that last? I mean, we've all tried it, whether it's, eating, exercising, whatever it is. We've all tried it. It doesn't work. It doesn't stick.
Yeah. I love what you say in the chapter. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read it. You say, I've realized that seeing things from a different perspective isn't just about changing your view. It's about opening doors to growth and new possibilities. See, that is so pivotal. And you give it a color. So you've given perspective blue, right? Did I get that right?
Yep.
I love that. I love that you're taking the idea of sprinkles and really addressing some things that are very difficult for people to even face. But the way you're presenting them and the way you're opening the door for us, it's more than just powerful. It's powerful, fun, and accomplished and achievable. And I wanted to ask you with that about the book, because in the book, you don't just talk about things. You give us examples. You give us things to do. I also love that you help us identify a trigger. And I wanted to ask you this, out of all of the sprinkles in each chapter, and we can go through them, which did you find your most challenging? Hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to ask you all the same question. I want you all to think about this. And I don't think Debbie will mind me sharing this, but I just want you to get a taste of the sprinkle effect, a guide to creating a more colorful and fulfilling life, available everywhere. You could also go to Debbie Weiss's website. We'll give you that too. But when you think about these, just stay with me for a minute. Think about this, because Debbie's going to answer this, and I will do the same. Here are some of the sprinkles. A sprinkle of perspective, a sprinkle of mindset, a sprinkle of belief, a sprinkle of courage, a sprinkle of responsibility, a sprinkle of dreams, a sprinkle of direction, a sprinkle of vision, a sprinkle of action, a sprinkle of discipline, a sprinkle of adaptability, a sprinkle of resilience, a sprinkle of curiosity, a sprinkle of connection, and a sprinkle of joy. When we come back, we're going to talk about which ones did Debbie find most challenging for her, and how about you? Which one is it for you? If you want to give us a call, 1-800-930-2819. We'd love to hear from you and give you some help. But let's take a short break. We'll be right back with my very special guest, Debbie Weiss. When we come back, more with Debbie, more with sprinkles, and more with the change that you can do. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Dr. Pat Show. For more information about me, you can go to drpatshow.com, or you can go to the company, unlimitedpossibilitiesnow.com. Go check us out over there. Or if you want to know about what I'm getting ready to launch, go to unstuckable.com. Today, it's all about the sprinkle effect, how Debbie R. Weiss transformed her life one small change at a time. And she does this by looking at different aspects of the sprinkle effect. And what does that mean? Look, I grew up with somebody that couldn't stand anything green. So if you had the sprinkles, they had to pick all the green ones off. Mm-hmm. So that was like a thing. But in life, we do the same. There are certain sprinkles we look at and we say, no, I am not. That is like not in my wheelhouse. Debbie, before we talk about your most challenging sprinkle effect, how do people find out about you? How do they find out about the show? How did they get the book? All of the above. And congratulations on an incredible book. I love what you've done in this book. I love that you've broken this down into so many very pertinent pieces that you and I are going to share what our challenges are. But how do people find out about you?
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. Best place for all of the things that you mentioned is my website, DebbieRWeiss.com. You just have to put in the R because a realtor in California got the website before me. And there you can find out about my books, my course, and my podcast on the Transformation Network.
Awesome. Okay. So I know this changes from day to day. Even since I looked at this last week, today my little challenge is different. What, as you were putting these in the book and you were writing them up, did you say to yourself, oh my goodness, this one is still a little bit of a challenge for me? Which one would you have picked?
Sprinkle of courage.
Oh, wow.
Because I consider myself a fraidy cat. And I don't mean just a fraidy cat of spiders and those kind, roller coasters, because I can't stand roller coasters, but just really always afraid to go out of my comfort zone. I feel like as a child, because of my weight, I was so often judged just by my appearance. And so I never wanted to put myself out there. And a lot of times, we have to put ourselves out there in order to progress. But I just felt like it's a lot easier to stay unseen in my little cocoon. And so any opportunity that was placed in front of me, and it didn't have to be anything big. It could be, do you want to learn how to roller skate? I'd right away say, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And it wasn't until I really did not learn the lesson until about my mid-50s, where some gut inside me said, I have to try this, because it was after my transformation, that my awareness around this all started. And I just knew if I didn't try something, this thing that I really wanted to, but I was so scared of doing, that I would regret it. And it literally, it's changed my life just by stepping out of my comfort zone.
And I love that you brought that up, and I love the way you described it, because, sometimes when we talk about courage, people think, oh man, I'm not going to be like you, Pat, jumping out of an airplane, skydiving. Well, no, we're not saying that. That's not really what we're talking about. But we face things in our courage profile. We face things when we talk about it. And, when you walk us through that and you explain it, we can really address that one step at a time. And I think that's what you're doing. You're saying to people, this is the whole pie. Where are you? What is the one you really want to get some movement on, some help on? And I said this to you earlier. I think sometimes we try to eat the whole pie.
Oh, yeah.
And then we forget what the first piece really tasted like, that one we really wanted. I have that problem with pizza, just saying. The one that I picked up on today in my reread of the book, it wasn't the one I got the other day, but the one today was discipline. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Courage and discipline are so cool together. They really are. If we had courage, belief, and discipline, we'd have CBD right there. So that's our own CBD tincture.
Love it.
But I remember skipping this chapter in my first read of the book. And then I went back and I said, where did that come from? Not really my strong suit, but it's so important for me now in my life. What do you find about this, right? Because you talk about this, gray is the color. That's the way I feel about discipline.
Yep. I think a lot of us do. You don't say discipline and think of like yellow sunshine, right?
But you say something interesting. Can we go over this? I was so surprised about what you wrote here, Debbie. The first is to figure out your why. Why have you decided to embark on the journey of transformation, I can't even say it, transformation in the first place? I was so surprised to see that question in here, but then I thought it makes sense, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And a question I never thought about. And when you really, really do, not some superficial why, and I walk you through in that chapter, well, keep questioning why, keep digging deeper, which is hard to do. You're like, well, I want to make more money. That's why. Well, why do you want to make more money? Because I want to, give everything I can to my family. Well, why do you want to do that? And just to keep saying why until you get to the bottom. And if you can keep that why on top of your mind, that will help with the discipline, because it'll just remind you why you're doing this in the first place. And so even when it's tough, you get a dose of motivation tapping back into your why.
I love this because this hit me like if you had your, what do you call that thing? Wheel of life. If you had the wheel of life in front of you, let's say, and I look at this and I go through the different sprinkles you've put in here. I'm pretty good. There's maybe another one I'm a little bit iffy on, but this is the one that's going to either move me towards activating what I've been dreaming, planning for, or not, or I'm going to stay stalled. And so it was so helpful to go through here and answer the questions. Why have you decided to start a business? Why? And that was great. And why have you decided to expand the network, to build amazing technology? What was what I realized in this that was extremely helpful to me in this area? Our why never changed. My why about the network never changed. See, people think you've probably been called Sprinkle Debbie. I don't know. I don't know what people.
I prefer Sprinkle Princess. Thank you.
I like Sprinkle Princess better. But for me, people associate me with transformation. And whenever they ask me the question, why, Pat? Why are you expanding? What are you thinking? Why are you doing this? You should just go retire somewhere. You don't have to do this. And I remember in 2003 when this started, and how utterly depressed I was and lost, and how I got put on a pathway so that we could help other people through a positive centric network, that we talk about sex, spirituality, and everything in between. And I have to remember that why every day, because that's the discipline I need to meet our deadline to launch Christmas and January. But what you do in this book, in this section, is fascinating. Why do you need to stop worrying? Why do you need, you blew me away by these questions. I didn't expect them. So you take us through why. How important is it if we don't always know our why? Are we going to be stuck here?
I think eventually you will be stuck, because if you don't know why you're doing it in the first place, then how motivated are you going to be? How disciplined are you possibly going to be if you don't even know why you're doing it? I mean, I guess you can think about that even in your professional life, right? I mean, and even if you're given a job at work, at least if you understand why you're doing it, it's when it's that disconnect where it just seems like some task that's a waste of time. But if you get the big picture and the why behind it, I think your perspective changes.
Yeah. And you explained this beautifully, your own circumstance, right? I mean, you taking care of another person, right? The level of discipline, I found this with taking care of my friend last year, the level of discipline required, and I think I got a good dose of discipline. The level of discipline that was required was an ongoing dose of sprinkling every day, just to remind me of that. It's not just about how do you take care of a loved one, but how do you do that? Take care of a business, Sometimes we can get overwhelmed and a bit burned out. And you help us understand how to hit the pause button before we do that. I could imagine there's a version of discipline, and then there's a version of discipline exhaustion. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I think I've been finding myself there actually recently, which is so interesting. And I just thought to myself the last week or two, I need to go read that chapter, because all of a sudden I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. And I'm thinking maybe it is because I'm just tired from, like, I've been so going. And then I have to tell myself, if I need a break, that's okay.
That's right.
In the past, I would have said, my self-talk would have been, what's wrong with you? You're lazy. Why aren't you doing it? But now I understand that I have to listen when my body and my mind are speaking to me.
Yeah. And I'm going to put an exclamation point right here on what you say at the end. Commitment is doing the thing you said you would do long after the mood you said it in has left you. That is the punchline.
I love that quote. It's not mine.
I love that.
But I love it too.
Yes, it's George Zaluki.
Yes.
I love that because, this is how we move ahead. I want to talk about, this is a book about change, but it's a very different book, because a lot of books you read, by the time you're done with chapter 3, you have to take a nap. That's how overwhelming talking about change is. What is it about the way you're presenting change that you have found works for you and is really different from a lot of the, quote, change books out there, Debbie? What do you think?
So it was very difficult for me to write either of these books, because I don't have any background. I don't have any training in journalism or communications. I'm an accounting major, the furthest thing away from writing. But what I discovered when I set out to do it, I was kind of holding myself up to like great writers. And what I realized is I don't necessarily like to read all those books. I want to read somebody I relate to, and it's easy reading. I don't want to have to interpret big words. I don't want to listen to scientific studies. Just, give me the facts and say it plainly. And I decided that if I want to read that, someone else probably wants to read something like that as well. And that is what I can offer, is just, here's the facts, here's what I discovered, and, tell you how to do it in an easy, manageable way, not something just pie in the sky.
Yeah. there are many, many places that I want to touch upon before we go here. Debbie, for you, I love that I interviewed another accountant here recently. I don't
Oh,
know if you
really?
know. Yeah.
No.
Bob Parsons, the founder of GoDaddy, started out not as Mr. GoDaddy, but started out, he's a math person, really, started with all of these accounting things and developed software programs, which I think ultimately he sold. You guys will have to fact check me on this, but he sold that business, and now we know it as Intuit and whatever they are.
Oh,
yeah. And then,
wow.
of course, he went on to I learned more from this interview with him than I could imagine, because some of the sprinkles you have in here, we don't take enough time to appreciate. And I'm so glad you put them in here. The other thing I'm really glad you did was separate sprinkles of belief, right? Sprinkles of mind and sprinkles of perspective. You separated those three.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you about that, because a lot of times we throw everything into one bucket. Why was that important to separate those three? I know once we get them, that's like a big boatload of sprinkles. Once we get those three.
I think I separated them because I think they're so often lumped together.
They are.
Right?
They really are.
They are. And they're not. And the thing about the perspective, and I think this was like one of those light bulb moments. It probably is written a million places, but you know how sometimes, like you look at the same thing 100 times, and then that 101st time, you're like, oh, now I get it. And for me, with perspective, it was the idea that each of us, even if we come from similar backgrounds, even if we have the same career, we're the same age, it doesn't matter. We each have a different pair of glasses that we're putting on based on all our past experience, and nobody's past experience is exactly the same. And that made so much sense to me, especially when I thought about like some of my relationships and why don't they understand? And I can't believe they don't see it that way. Like, what's wrong with them? I really now try to catch myself and try and imagine putting on their glasses instead of my glasses. So that's one thing about perspective. And then mindset is, oh my goodness, to me, like that, this has been the pivotal thing that I am now taking with me since this whole journey began, is that I decide, I think it's Henry Ford who said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And that really hits home for me, So, and then belief, oh boy, I've spent a whole lifetime not believing in myself in every way,
right.
And it's different. All three of them are different.
Yeah, they are. I saw a movie. The movie wasn't very popular when it came out. It was with Kevin Costner. I can't remember the exact name, but it was really a very interesting movie. And, his belief that his wife had not died, I mean, that belief was so strong. And at the end, there's a quote where he says he's talking to somebody that didn't believe him, right? Mm-hmm. And he says, he just looks at her and he says, it's the belief that gets you there. See, that is very important. It's the belief that gets you there. Isn't that what we're talking about when we say the belief that whether I can or I can't? Those two things alone, depending upon where we land, are either going to get us there or not get us there, don't you think?
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000%. I've seen the difference. I've seen what I've accomplished since I began to truly believe in myself. And for me, one of those big things is, well, why not? Like, if I see someone else doing it, I think, well, they can do it. I don't know why. I always go back to this in my head. When I was pregnant for the first time and I was scared out of my mind, right? How am I going to get this baby out?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, look at the millions and, billions of women who have done it. If they can do it, I can do it too. And I really try to apply that thinking to, whatever next challenge I'm taking on.
I got to tell you, this is pivotal. I love in the book and thank you for bringing these 4 points from Gay Hendricks into the conversation. But you put in Gay's book, The Big Leap, there are 4 type of limiting beliefs. And if we could understand that there are 4, not 4 million, that there are 4, this could really help us. One is feeling flawed or unworthy of success. Now, that is a big one. That shows up as imposter syndrome, so many things, right? That thing right there will stop you from taking that right-hand turn that will take you to an interview, that a job that you really would love to get, but now you're not thinking you're worthy of it. Fear of disloyalty and abandonment. We're going to do a whole show on that, by the way.
Mm.
Fear of the burdens of success. Yeah, they're there. Fear of surpassing others. When I looked at these 4, and these break down into others, I asked myself, where am I today? I did. I stopped and I asked myself,
and
where am I today? I have to say, I'm probably at fear of the burdens of success.
Mm.
I'm probably right there today because we're so close, but yet I don't know what that means. And so I had to keep reading on. But beliefs, I do believe this. They're either going to get us to where we go or not.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're, talking about that, it does bring me to the whole idea of being an author and imposter syndrome. And if when I started, I honestly didn't believe that I was going to actually do it. And then maybe when I remember when I had 10,000 words, I thought, wow, I can't believe that I actually wrote 10,000 words. If I've done that, then I now believe that I could go all the way and write a whole book with my first book. But I did not believe it when I first started. And I have to say, when I first, going back to the Weight Watchers meetings and just showing up, I don't think originally I believed that I was actually going to lose the weight. It was almost like I convinced myself, fake it till you make it.
Let me just pop something up for you around that. Let's stay with the Weight Watch. Let's stay with that for a minute.
Okay.
Because I caught myself in a conversation and then I caught myself believing this fact in the conversation, which wasn't. So there's this notion in the world that you will stop being I'm just going to tell you this is not the truth, but this is the belief that once you hit a certain age, you're not going to be able to build muscle. So that's a belief. And that is a larger belief than you can imagine. People do believe that because you're trying to be sold a lot of products. But that's it. Okay, women, it's like women. Once you hit this age, you're not going to build muscle, blah, blah, blah. So what happens with that is you say, you're looking at your fit gym, sitting down there in your living room. You're looking at, and you're like, why bother? Why am I going to get on that dang thing? So this is really part of it. Let's talk about this for a minute, because I think this is going to tie the whole thing in. You could have had a chapter called The Sprinkles of the Stories You Tell Yourself, because this is part of it.
I love that. I love that, because it is all about the stories you tell yourself, right? That's what makes up your mindset and your belief. You're the ones just keep telling yourself the same story over and over again until you actually believe it. And how common is it that, once you hit menopause, forget it, right? All bets are off. You'll never lose weight. You'll never, same thing, build muscle. Yeah, you won't if you don't take any action, but if you take action, you will.
And I love the way you end this chapter, because it's to this point. These beliefs are simply thoughts you have been thinking about over and over again. So you believe in them to be true. One of the greatest things about our brain is that it's neuroplastic. So we have the ability to reprogram it regardless of our age. And boy, I think that message right there, if we got that, if we understood that we could reprogram our brain It doesn't matter about age. It doesn't matter about our past or our childhood. And I think that's part of the message that you're bringing forth. We are not victim of our circumstances, Debbie, unless we make ourselves that. Is that part of the message of the book?
That's my biggest message, because that was my life shift. And I didn't even realize, I didn't know that I had that mindset. I didn't understand that the perspective that I was looking at my life and viewing myself as a victim of my circumstances. I hadn't identified that. And when I did, it really did cause me to take a hard look at myself in the mirror and kind of say, you know, and I'll allude to my favorite chapter of the book, chapter of a sprinkle of responsibility. Yep. Because when you think you're a victim, you're taking all the responsibility, the blame, right? And you're pointing fingers at everyone and everything. Well, I couldn't help it. This thing happened to me, and he did this. And what was I supposed to do? And never shining the light on yourself. Because despite everything that happens, and yes, some things are out of our control, but we are always in control in how we respond to those things and to those people.
Yeah. And, you really, really just kind of wrap it around the pole a little bit when you come up with the exam. This chapter is really robust, but the responsibility chapter ties right in as well. I don't have time. I'm too old to learn anything. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable. I'm not worthy of being loved. These are so interesting when you think about it. And our society right now wants to tell you you're too old. I did an audit about a month ago, and even watching like the Hallmark Channel, I was like, oh my gosh, now what am I going to be? I'm going to get this illness, and what's this for? And I noticed that if you are a television watcher, the subliminal messages that tell you you're not enough, or you're too old, or you better do something, or there are just so many of them. And so we have to find a way to not take those in. And I think that's part of what you're talking about. Our level of responsibility is not just to the stories we tell, but to the stories we take in, right, Debbie?
Absolutely. Gosh, it's so funny. I can just hear my husband saying, well, I've been like this my whole life. I'm not changing now. Well, you could change. That's your choice. But just acknowledge that's your choice. You are making a choice. It's not like a foregone conclusion. Oh, you lasted 65 years and you acted like this, so no chance of doing anything else.
Yeah. And boy, I'll tell you, fear loves to get into limiting beliefs. I mean, fear like looks at limiting beliefs and says, oh my gosh, I got a smorgasbord here. I'm going to have a blast, right? But part of what you've written in this book is you inviting us to, and I remember this in the book, you tell us each time we're faced with fear, we're growing. Oh my gosh, of course, right? So you couldn't have courage without fear, right?
Right.
And then you tell us we're building our confidence muscle. And I want to just bring this full circle. I mean, the book that you've written, The Sprinkle Effect, has so many things involved. In these last couple minutes, I would love to hear your invitation to people to be able to embrace where you are and take those small steps forward. What's your message for people? Let's give them something to do here today.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about small steps and small victories, and celebrating those small victories and not discounting. If you, I hate to keep going back to the weight loss, but it's just so easy to do that. You want to drink more water. Well, that doesn't mean that you go from 0 glasses of water to 8 glasses of water today, right? I mean, it's not happening. It's not happening. So if you go from 0 glasses to 1/4 of a glass, and you stay at 1/4 of a glass for 3 weeks, fantastic. That is more than you have done. That's progress. And you are acting on, your purpose, you're taking purposeful action in the direction of your goal instead of sitting back and saying, oh, I can't do that. And when you start those steps, it really is little steps. It feels like you're getting nowhere. It feels like a waste, right? Like, what's a quarter glass of water when I really want to drink 8 glasses of water in a day? That's ridiculous. But you'll get there one small sip at a time.
Yeah. I find that fascinating because, people always ask, well, I don't like water, well, okay, I get to drink pH water out of my machine at home, but I like to put a little flavor in it. And I find if I put some kind of little flavor of something in it, right, and I put it in my big bottle, I'm drinking bottles of that. But I have to ask myself, where did I think I couldn't flavor my water? Where did that? And I think part of what we're talking about is just being mindful of all the excuses that we come up before the thing happens. I mean, listen, I play table tennis twice a week. I really would like to play more, but I play twice, Saturday and Monday nights. And I sat here this morning, and before you could shake a stick at it, I had 5 reasons why I wasn't going to be able to go play tonight.
I've been there. Even something that you enjoy.
Even something I enjoy. Now, clearly it may be closed. But Debbie, you bring this message forward every show you do, every talk you do, every article you write, every book you write. I want to ask you this last question. Thank you so much for today. And again, tell people how they find out about you, your show, how they get the book. I want to know what your personal message is from Debbie, from the heart of Debbie Weiss. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave people with today?
So thank you, Dr. Pat, for a wonderful conversation. First of all, I'm going to leave you with one of those ideas, in this case, an exact quote that I've heard, and probably you have too, 100 times. And one day I read it and said, oh, now I get it. And it's from The Wizard of Oz, from Glinda the Good Witch, who said, you've always had the power, my dear. You just had to learn it for yourself. And I thought that just meant, hey, Dorothy, all you had to do was click your heels and say you wanted to go home. I never thought beyond the movie. But think about it. Each of us has the power to change our lives one small sprinkle at a time, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of your age. Stop with the excuses and you can make it happen.
I'm going to take that to heart. The way you've laid this out, there are no excuses if we follow what you've given us. And you've given it to us in really bite-sized pieces, which I love. But the way you've talked about each of these different aspects, each of the different sprinkles, when you take them one at a time, you can achieve significant change in that. But when you put them all together, including the sprinkles of joy, now you have something to look forward to. And I want to thank you for doing that in a way we really need right now, Debbie. So thank you so very, very much. How do we follow you on social media and so forth?
Yep. Everything is Debbie R. Weiss. So Debbie.R.Weiss or Debbie R. Weiss or some iteration of that.
I love it. Debbie, thank you so much. Everybody get a copy of the book. And remember what I said to you all earlier. There's more than one book if you go to Debbie's website. The one we're talking about now is called The Sprinkle Effect, how Debbie R. Weiss transformed her life one small change at a time. But this is for all of you as well. And remember, when you take a look at that table of contents. Pick one. Pick the one thing that you're thinking, if I were to act on this group of sprinkles, my day tomorrow would be so much better. Thank you, Debbie. Take care. Thank you so much.
Too.
Thank you all out there. Remember, doesn't always have to be the discipline one. Maybe it's something else for you. But take a look and remember to sprinkle your life full of joy. We'll see you next time.
you.